Welcome to the Explainer. Today we are jumping into the super complex web of relationships in East Asia. This is a place where just one single event can set off these huge shockwaves. And we're talking about everything from economies to military alliances to the environment.
So let's get right into it. We're going to follow the ripples, starting right at the center of the US-China trade fight, and see just how far they travel across the whole region. It's really a story about how, in the end, everyone is connected.
All right, let's start at ground zero, that high-stakes trade conflict between the US and China. This isn't just about dollars and cents. It's casting this huge shadow of uncertainty over the entire globe.
You really want to get a feel for the tension? Just look at how fast things went off the rails. It started back in January with what seemed like a simple policy change, but man, it just exploded into a full-on tariff war. By April, we were talking triple-digit tariffs. Yeah, there was a 90-day truce that cooled things down a bit, but that fundamental friction, it's still there. And you can feel that the clock is ticking. In this quote, it just nails the mood in the market right now. Joe Ha, who's the chief economist over at Anil International, basically says, look, even if they strike some kind of deal, the big problems aren't going anywhere. The feeling is, this sour relationship, this is the new normal. It's not just some passing storm.
Right. And this is where you see it's so much deeper than just tariffs. On one side, you have the U.S. demanding that China buy way more American soybeans to help with the trade deficit. And what's China's counter? They want the U.S. to loosen up on selling them those advanced AI chips, the stuff that's going to power the future. So what does it all boil down to? It's a clash between America's farms and China's tech dreams.
Okay, so all this uncertainty, it's not just a problem for Beijing and Washington. Nope. It's making other big players in the region rethink everything. They're having to hedge their bets, find new supply chains, and build stronger, smarter alliances.
And you can see this playing out perfectly between South Korea and Vietnam. As companies started looking for a China plus one strategy, South Korean firms just flooded Vietnam with cash. We're talking a staggering $92 billion. That makes South Korea the single biggest foreign investor in the country. It's a huge deal.
So why Vietnam? What's the big draw? Well, it's become this key piece in a strategy people are calling friendshoring. Think about it. Labor is cheaper than in China. The government offers some really sweet tax breaks, plus it has a whole network of free trade agreements. It's basically become the go-to alternative for companies trying to not put all their eggs in the China basket.
But, and here's the twist, it's not some simple escape hatch. Both South Korea and Vietnam are now getting hit with their own direct tariffs from the US. So that just adds another really complex layer to the whole thing. And in a way, it's pushing them to work even closer together.
And the sheer scale of this shift is just massive. We're not talking about a few small factories here and there. Take a giant like Samsung. They now make over 60% of their phones in Vietnam. That makes the country absolutely critical to their entire global operation.
So you see how this works? The economic ripples are now spilling over into security. They're creating brand new vulnerabilities, and honestly, they're just turning up the heat on security issues that have been simmering for a long, long time. And one of the biggest new problems is actually about people. Demographics. Get this. In just 5 years, South Korea's military has shrunk by 20%. That's a huge drop, from about 560,000 troops down to just 450,000 today.
And look, that's not just some abstract statistic. The country's own defense ministry is saying they are 50,000 troops short of what they need to be defense ready. That's a serious problem that goes right to the heart of their ability to defend themselves.
So, what's causing this? The root of the problem is this massive social shift happening in the country. South Korea has the world's lowest fertility rate, period. And it's one of the fastest aging societies on Earth. This isn't a short-term issue. It's a challenge that's going to reshape the country for decades to come.
At the same time, you've got tensions just flaring up in the South China Sea, and the language being used, it's getting alarmingly blunt. You have leaders like the Philippine President Marcos Jr. basically being forced to spell out in no uncertain terms what would happen in a conflict over Taiwan. And we're not just talking about words here. These aren't hypotheticals. We're seeing actual flare-ups. Things like collisions between Chinese and Philippine ships out at sea. It just shows you how incredibly tense and volatile the situation has become on the water.
Okay, let's zoom out one last time. Because while all these countries are trying to navigate these man-made conflicts, they're all facing even bigger shared threats. And these are threats that, they don't care about borders.
Japan is a really powerful example of this kind of climate whiplash. First, they get hit with this insane summer heat wave that just destroys crops.
That leads to a bad rice harvest, a nationwide shortage, and prices going through the roof. The government actually has to release its emergency rice reserves. But then they get hit with record-breaking rain, which causes massive flooding and evacuations. It's just this brutal, vicious cycle.
Another one of these shared crises, plastic pollution. And the scale of this problem is it's hard to wrap your head around. Globally, only about 9% of plastic gets recycled. 9! The vast majority, more than half of it, just ends up in a landfill. The rest is either burned or worse, just mismanaged and pollutes everything.
And when they try to fix this at the UN, total deadlock. You've got one group of countries, the High Ambition Coalition, demanding real, legally binding limits on how much plastic can even be produced. But then you've got another bloc, mostly fossil fuel producers, who say, no, let's just focus on recycling and managing the waste. They're two completely different ways of looking at the problem.
And honestly, the stakes couldn't be higher. Environmental groups are basically screaming from the rooftops that if they can't agree on strong, binding cuts to production, we're going to miss a once-in-a-generation chance to actually turn the tide on plastic pollution.
So here we are. From a tariff on soybeans to a typhoon in the Pacific, what we see is a region that's completely defined by this incredibly complex web of interdependence. Every single action has a reaction, and those ripples, they're felt by everyone. Which really just leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? In a world that is this tightly woven together, is any nation's problem ever really its own?